All right, awesome. Thanks, guys, for joining in, and welcome to the first of our PreMedSTAR application bootcamp series. So, we're going to have a webinar for you guys each Thursday this month so that you're able to go through the application process like a pro. And real quick, I just want to thank SNMA for partnering with us to make this webinar happen. And I actually have Todd Shell here who is going to speak to you guys, and she is with SNMA. So Todd Shell, why don't you go ahead and say hi to everyone?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Todd Shell-Young, and I'm serving as the 2018-2019 pre-medical board member with the Student National Medical Association. We are very excited to be partnering with PreMedSTAR in this effort to host the application boot camp. We are available whenever you need us. If you have any questions for us throughout the year, you can contact us at MAPS, so MAPS at snma.org. Also, just if you want to continue getting more information after the MAPS Bootcamp, we'll be hosting our National Leadership Institute this year at the in June in Minnesota, University of Minnesota Medical School. And we're very excited to be hosting it. We'll be doing a series of workshops, a medical school tour. We'll be doing mock interviews, personal statement reviews, the whole gamut. We're really excited. So more information will be on our Instagram. I have our Instagram on the board behind me. So if you type in SNMA Maps, you can find more information. And it will be on our website very soon at snma.org. So thank you all for joining, and we're excited to work with you all. Thanks so much, Lauren.
Thanks so much, Todd Shell. And let me go ahead and share my screen with everyone, and they can take a little screenshot just so they know where to find all that information you were speaking about. So you guys, just like Todd Shell had mentioned, here is their little flyer. So go ahead and visit their website to look for more information if you guys are interested, all right? And real quick, like usual, I'm going to jump in and do a quick little tour of PreMedSTAR. If you guys are a member, you may have noticed that there's been a lot of changes, and those of you who aren't yet registered, this will give you a little sneak peek and some insight on why you should sign up and make an account. So here I'm pulling up just my profile here, and right now I'm on the activity dashboard. And so you guys can go through this. It's kind of like a LinkedIn. You can see updates that people post, any questions. It's a great way to meet other pre-meds or any of the medical students or admissions people on the site. So definitely go ahead and scroll through that dashboard to see if it answers any questions you might have or not know that you have yet. And real quick, I want to give a shout out to Sean, who's been recognized as a pre-med of the week. So you guys can go on over here and read a little bit about him and congratulate him on this recognition. And like I mentioned before, PreMedSTAR has gone through some changes. So I just want to highlight those for you and show you the new updated profiles here. So I'm going to share with you guys my profile. And those of you who have set up your account on the older version, you'll see that it looks a little bit different, but all the same features are there with some added bonuses. So if you guys do need to make any edits, you can just click on this little pencil here, and it's going to take you back to the old style like this, which some of you may recognize a little bit more, where you can edit each of the different categories, clubs and organizations, volunteer activities, and such forth. But real quick, I'm just going to go ahead and show you guys what the new profile looks like and kind of what the new additions were. So just like last time, you can put all of your information in About Me here. The nice thing is you can see related profiles to yourself, so it gives you some good ideas on who to connect to. Like always, you can categorize all your activities and keep everything in order. So then once you are filling out your applications, you're just copying and pasting and everything is good to go. So make sure you guys keep track of all of that. There's everything from work experience to clinical experience and any type of research or publications or even awards that you might have been involved in. So when you get the chance, go through and update that with all of your activities here. And then I did mention that there has been a new addition. You can also see any blog articles or posts that people had made. It's a nice way to kind of follow your pre-med adventure, and then hopefully once you matriculate, you'll be able to add on there about your medical school adventures. So that's just what I wanted to share with you guys real quick. And last thing before we jump into the presentation, I'm just going to show you guys the video highlighting the on-track portfolio.
Being a pre-med is hard work. With so much going on, how do you keep track of it all? You're in clubs, you're doing volunteer work, research, presentations, physician shadowing, the list goes on and on. The last thing you want to lose track of, all the wonderful things you've done during your pre-med journey. Well, you don't have to. With PreMedSTAR's on-track portfolio, you can log all of your pre-medical activities in one place and access them anytime from anywhere. When it comes time to apply to medical school, you'll be good to go. Stay on track with PreMedSTAR on-track portfolio. Join our online community of pre-medical students for free at www.premedstar.com and tell a friend.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, guys. So one last quick thing. I'm going to come back to this at the end of the webinar, but I just wanted to get it out there. We are going to be doing a giveaway for you guys. So whoever over this next week before the next webinar inside of our bootcamp series invites the most pre-meds to join the site will win a free book set for the MCAT prep review from Kaplan. So I'll give a little bit more information. But without further ado, I just want to get us started on the presentation here. So everyone welcome Dr. Laine Young-Walker. She is the Associate Dean for Student Activities at the University of Missouri School of Medicine. So Dr. Young-Walker, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me to talk a little bit about Mizzou Med and about our admissions process. I think probably you have my presentation to share.
Let's see. I do not have your presentation, but I can get that pulled up for you.
Okay.
So why don't you go ahead and just start, and then once I get
I'll start with a little bit about myself. So,
yeah, perfect.
I am in Columbia, Missouri right now at Mizzou Med, which is University of Missouri Columbia School of Medicine. I'm actually originally from Kansas City, but ended up coming here to go to college and stayed for medical school. The reason I stayed was because this was the first year that we were moving into what was then called problem-based learning, and now it's called patient-based learning. And I really thought that that was a great way to learn medicine. I didn't see myself as doing as well if I was just sitting in a lecture and hearing material and having to regurgitate it. I really felt like if I were learning in a case-based format, that was a better way for me to learn. So I did stay here for medical school. And ended up doing my subsequent residency and fellowship here in Columbia, practiced in the community for a few years, and then came back and joined the university. So my training is as a child and adolescent psychiatrist. And so I've done work clinically for several years. And then in 2016, November, is when I joined the School of Medicine as the Associate Dean for Student Programs with School of Medicine. So in that role, my function is really everything that is related to medical students except curriculum. So recruitment, admissions, once students have been admitted, then helping them transition from year 1 to 2 to 3 and 4, doing all the orientations and class meetings that they have to help them move forward, advising students on things such as career choice and match, looking at health and wellness and trying to make sure that we have activities that we're doing that are promoting health and wellness. And then also looking at not just health and wellness, but diversity and inclusion, and how can we make sure all of our classes as diverse as possible, and that everyone feels very included in the whole environment and culture at Mizzou Med. So what I do for medical students is a lot. I kind of joke and say I'm the kind of stand-in mom for medical students when they're not with their families, to help them through one of the most difficult and challenging times in their life. So I can keep talking if you don't have my presentation. That's an easy thing for me to do, but I want to just check in and see if you have it yet.
Got that pulled up. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit more about exactly what you do at the School of Medicine. So if you like, we can go ahead and get started.
That would be great.
Perfect. So let me go ahead and pull up your presentation here and go ahead and start when you're ready.
So what I want to talk about today is really helping you to understand a little bit more about our School of Medicine and this incoming class. I'll give some information about what the incoming class looks like, and then also what our process is for accepting students into Mizzou Med. You can advance. And so our recruitment efforts really are a team approach. And we have a team of about 4 people that focus on in-state recruitment and also out-of-state recruitment. And Robin Clay is our primary recruiter who really, he utilizes PreMedSTAR for his recruitment efforts. And so I want to make sure, and I'll tell you this more than once so you can remember it, that if you have not completed your profile, that you do that on PreMedSTAR. Next slide. So this last academic year, there were 51,680 applicants to all the United States medical schools, which is a huge number. And of that, 21,338 actually matriculated. So if you look at the number of applicants and the number of people who get accepted into medical school, it's a vast difference. So it's important, I think, when you think about applying, that you be a little strategic in your application process. And most applicants are applying to 16 schools on the average. So if you're only applying to 1 or 2 schools, you're going to reduce your chances of getting into medical school. So when you look at Mizzou Med, we had 2,671 applications. Of that, you look at our out-of-state and in-state comparison, we had 2,117 that were out-of-state versus 554 that were in-state. And when you look at our numbers over time, like over the last 5 years, our number of Missouri residents has remained steady. Our number of out-of-state applications have increased. We end up interviewing 405. So you think about 2,671 apply and 405 get an interview for a class size of 112. Now our class size has changed a little bit over time. We had in the past had 96. We increased to 128, and now this year we're at 112. I foresee that in the future we're going to probably increase our class size a little bit each year over the next couple of years, but probably won't ever go past 128. And so for the entering class as of May 8th, and the reason I say as of May 8th is because the people who have been accepted into our medical school had a date of April 30th that they had to get rid of multiple offers if they had more than one offer. But some people are still holding more than one offer. So there's the possibility that we may have some people that we've accepted that decline our offer, and then we'll go to our wait list. But our averages related to GPA and MCAT really have been consistent. If you look at this year versus the last 2 or 3 years, they've been about the same. The average cumulative GPA is about 3.74, and the average science GPA is 3.68, with an MCAT average being about 508. And so at this point, as of May 8th, we have about a 47 to 53 split of male-female, and our in-state versus out-of-state is 85% in-state and 15% out-of-state. One of the things that we focus on is the composition of the class, and we want to make sure that the class is not a cookie cutter. Everyone looks the same and is the same and has the same experiences. We want to make sure that we have accepted people from, can you go back to the other slide? That we've accepted people in rural areas, from social economic disadvantaged status, minority students. And so this is really just a breakdown of kind of a rural, lower SES, and then underrepresented in medicine, which is the African American, Hispanic, American Indian, and then other minorities. Now there might be some overlap. You might be a rural student, but also listed as other minorities. So this doesn't mean a one-on-one relation or correlation. Next slide. And in this entering class, this is the top schools that we've accepted from. One is University of Missouri in Columbia, then St. Louis, WashU, and Missouri State. And then there are some people who had more than one school. So because our statistics, typically we do accept out-of-state students, but we have more in-state than out-of-state, being a state college or a state medical school. most of our people are coming from Missouri colleges. Next slide. So I want to talk about our process a little bit. Our applicants receive a holistic screening. And so those that score high enough on their screening are offered an interview. And the interview process is that you have 2 one-hour interviews with people on the admissions committee. And we have about 25 faculty members and students that are on the admissions committee. There's about 3 student representatives and the rest are faculty. The admissions committee meets once a week and they review everybody that's had interviews in that previous week. And so the people who interview you are really your advocates. They are there to present your case and why the admissions committee should select you. And then everybody on that committee has a vote. So it's not just the 2 people you spend time with, but it's the whole 25 people on the admissions committee that make a decision in whether or not you're accepted. Next slide. So I want to talk about that holistic screening because that's been a change for us over the last maybe 5 years or so. And the holistic screening process, I think, has really added to our ability to have a more diverse student population. So the screening, there's a screening committee, and that's separate from the admissions committee. And the screening committee is about 10 to 12 people who had either been on the admissions committee in the past, some of them are on it currently, and they are split up into different groups. And so there's 4 different groups. There's an altruism, leadership, research, exposure to medicine group, diversity and distance travel group, personal statement and secondary essay group, and then letters of evaluation. And so in the past, it would be that one person would look at one entire application. And in looking at that one entire application for screening, help make a determination of whether or not you were accepted for an interview. But now you have one application with, at minimum, 4 different people looking at it for their specific categories. And that really provides a more holistic way to look at your application, and it allows more than just one person to kind of make a decision of whether you should move on to an interview. There's a whole rating sheet that's used. Go back, I'm sorry, I'm not quite done. There's a whole rating sheet that's used to kind of rate you on each of these categories, and your score on the categories really determines whether you get an interview. Thank you, next slide. Every one of the criteria is scored and summed, so there's an overall ranking of the applicants that determines whether you get an interview. And then as I said before, then you have 2 one-hour interviews on the same day, and then each person that interviews is presented to the admissions committee. Next slide. So over the past 5 years, we've had a 55% increase in applications in general. So if you look at that number, I think it was 2,617, that has steadily increased to more than 55% of what it had been in the past. And as I said earlier, the majority of that increase is really from out-of-state students. The in-state has kind of stayed flat around that 500, 550 range. Our interviews have remained around 400. And we've noticed that over time that the percentage of applicants, the people that are sending in applications, are self-identifying from racial and ethnic backgrounds as underrepresented in medicine. That was about 14% of the applications in 2015, but then when you look at this year, it went up to 26%, almost double. So we're having an increase in applications in general, we're having an increase in out-of-state applications, and we're having an increase in applications from those in historically underrepresented in medicine. Next slide. Before the holistic screening process, according to the AAMC, what's listed as underrepresented in medicine, there were about 6 to 8% of those were offered interviews. And since we've done this new holistic screening process, that percent that's been offered interviews is raised up to 13 to 18%. Next slide. And then when you look at matriculants, so if you look at over time from 2014 until now, the number of applicants who have matriculated into school here who are in the underrepresented minority category has steadily increased from 2% to 6 to 9 to 10%, with a record percentage rate of 18.75 for this matriculating class. Again, until day one when we start school, things could change, but I don't think they're going to change that much. And so definitely we have seen, either through our holistic screening process and also through just communication and training that we're doing with our admissions committee and other things that I'll talk about a little later, we've been able to really focus on a more diverse and inclusive class. Next slide. So I want to talk about some of the initiatives we have implemented to increase diversity and inclusion. This was the first year we had what's called these inclusion symposiums during interviews. So on the first and third Mondays of every month, we would have interviews and have a period in time where anyone who was interviewing that day could come and spend time in a more relaxed way to be able to talk with faculty, staff, students who were motivated and interested in diversity and inclusion. And that doesn't mean you had to be a certain race or ethnicity. There were all races and colors of interviewees and also of faculty, staff, and students at those symposiums. And so that really, I think, we did surveys to see people's responsiveness to those, and it really did change some of the beliefs that people had coming into an interview and then leaving Mizzou Med. A second thing that we have implemented has been a diversity and inclusion primer for people who've been accepted. So we have our orientation, and that's a week at the end of the summer, and we added this diversity and inclusion primer to other primers we have. So we have a biochemistry, an anatomy, and a physiology primer that matriculants can do in the summer, online learning to help kind of get them ready for med school. We added this primer where they could have an online presence and engage with faculty and students for the month or two before they come for orientation. Watch a video, and the video is about an inner city emergency room and really focuses on health disparities and some of the challenges with healthcare that different people have based on either their socioeconomic status or where they live or their race or ethnicity. So they watched that at home, and then they came the day before orientation and they got to meet the deans. They ended up having like an icebreaker activity with faculty and students. And then we all went into the auditorium and broke up in small groups where we talked about that video that they watched. And there were some questions that we all kind of answered and talked about how that might help us to understand our patients' experiences if we ourselves didn't have those type of experiences. And then after that, then we all came back into the main area and people's families could come, and we had people, somebody had a new baby that was 2 weeks old, parents came, and we had just games, and we played games in the entryway there where our lecture hall is, and just spent time getting to know one another. And the goal of that activity was truly this, to make sure that students who came to our university as first-year medical students had a connection with somebody before they stepped foot on campus, and that connection could be continued through this experience that we had at the pre-orientation activity. And we really have seen, more than I anticipated, that the students who did this and participated in this activity, it was open to every M1 who wanted to come, they really felt connected, and they've continued to stay connected with those people that they engaged with even before they came here. And so that primer that they do online leads to the end culmination of the activity, but we carried it forward, and we ended up then having a diversity and inclusion activity for the whole M1 class during orientation. So in the first year, we had about maybe 15, 20 who did the primer, but our class was 128. And so there was many people that didn't participate, but we wanted to make sure that they were able to have some sort of engagement in an activity. So we spent a couple of hours during the orientation exposing them to an interactive theater where there's some sketches about different health experiences. So there's a African-American female who's young, and her mother is bringing her to the physician for birth control, and she doesn't want birth control. And then as the skit plays out, it really comes up that the mother is worried because she had the child at a very young age. And so it's a skit where they play the skit out, it goes really bad, and then they play it again. And when they do it again, the students were able to stop the skit at certain places and change the narrative to turn it around and make it a more positive kind of skit in the end. The second skit that we did during orientation was about a a young college Hispanic male who had gone skiing and he'd hurt himself. And so he went to the doctor for pain meds. And it was just that whole interplay between the physician feeling he was drug seeking and making different comments about, well, I didn't know that Hispanics even skied. You know, those kind of comments is how the skit played out at first. And then when we replayed it, then the medical students were able to kind of stop it and change the narrative. And so I think those things really help people thinking about health and health disparities and challenges that may happen in the health arena and how they can engage with patients in a way where everyone is treated with respect. And next slide. So in addition to our things that we do in interviews, things that we do during orientation, we also work with the Student National Medical Association locally for different events that they do. And then we have a variety of pipeline programs from middle school through college. And I've just listed some of those. I won't really go through and talk about each one of them. Next slide. So the question is, what are we looking for? So we had a class of 128, and we have a PBL curriculum, which is patient-based learning. That means that for 8 weeks, the students are in a group with 8 students and a facilitator. And they have those groups 3 times a week. In addition to those groups, they have some lectures. In the groups, they're going over a case during that week. And so they get a little bit of that case in day 1, and they come up with objectives to go and research. And they get a little more of the case on day 2, and they have more objectives. And they get the final piece of the case. And often the case links to the lecture. So when we're looking at students and who we want to come into our Mizzou Med curriculum, we're looking for people that work well with others, because you have to be able to spend a whole 8 weeks really in relationship with everybody else in your group. We want students who communicate effectively. We want people who are patient-centered, that really are focused on the patient and how they can do the most for the patient. We want people who have a sincere motivation to practice medicine. And that comes through a lot of times at the interview, that you can really tell. You can't always tell on paper, but you can tell when you talk with someone. And we look for people that are really well-rounded, that have some shadowing experiences, potentially leadership experiences. It's not mandatory that everybody do research, but research could be another piece to who you are if you like that. And then also that you're academically capable of the rigor of medical school. That doesn't mean everybody has to have the highest MCAT score or a 4.0 GPA, but just that you're capable of being able to succeed. Next slide. So when we are looking at these things, we're looking in various places. We're looking at the entire application. We're looking at the letters of evaluation or recommendation, your personal statement, your resume or your CV, and the interview is really, really important. If you're worried that you're not strong in interviewing or portraying yourself, it would be very important for you to think about trying to practice. If you can get some mock interviews in. We have one of the programs I listed earlier, the Med Prep 2, does give people the opportunity to have mock interviews and have them taped and have people give them feedback. So if at your school there's any ability to do that, or if you have a mentor or someone who can do that with you, I think that could be very helpful. So I want to say this because sometimes it takes more than once to remember things. Don't forget to complete your PreMedSTAR profile. And we do have a recruiter that utilizes the PreMedSTAR for his recruitment efforts, and that's Robin Clay, if you remember from earlier. Next slide. So I know there are some questions that have come across the screen, and I think Lauren's been trying to hold those and make sure that they don't, I don't forget any of those. So I'm going to open up for questions now, Lauren, if you can help me out.
Perfect. Yeah. So we're just going to go through, we'll first go through the Q&A submitted questions. And while people are submitting for the next minute, go ahead and fill out that webinar poll. And then we are going to hop right in for Q&A for the rest of this session. And Dr. Young-Walker, thank you so much. That was a very informative presentation.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so we did get a question in the Q&A here that said, what are some things to avoid in your personal statement, and how can you make your personal statement stand out?
you want to try and count how many times you say I and take them away. Take the I's out of the personal statement and try to make it more about your experiences and less about you necessarily. It's important to have some reflection in there. So you can talk about, I shadowed here and I shadowed there and I did this and I did that. And that's much different than saying, when I spent time in the cardiology office and the patient came in with congestive heart failure, it really made me understand more fully about what that experience was like for that person. So being able to reflect on what you saw and what you did and then feed it back is going to be better than just saying, I did this and I did that and I did that, and doing a checkoff list. So there was another part to that question, Lauren, you got to help me remember.
Let's see, the other part was, how do you make your personal statement stand out?
So I think it's important not to be odd or different in a way that's bad, but to do something in that personal statement that sets you apart, right? So your experience, you as a person, is different than Lauren's experience or my experience. There's something that you've had in your life that's going to make you stand out amongst the 2,217 other applicants, right? So you've got to have some sort of catch that helps them see you as a person. And for everybody, that's different. I can't give you a, for sure, do this or do that, but something that causes them to stop and want to read more.
Okay, perfect. And then Jen posted a little follow-up to something that was inside one of your slides, just looking for specification on what you guys mean by distance traveled. I'm assuming it's more just of an adversity statement. So
distance travel can be, if, you know, some people, okay, say for instance, you have applicant 1 who has a 4.0 and top MCAT scores and has done nothing other than school. And you have applicant B who worked through school to put themselves through and might have a 3.7 GPA and a little bit of a lower MCAT. They've traveled a different distance. They've had to battle with academics, but also life. That's one thing about distance travel. It also can be just experiences that maybe accentuate or add to you. You want to be a doctor, but it's not always medical experiences that show your distance in coming from point A to point B. Does that, I hope that helps. If it doesn't, send another question.
Okay, perfect. And then let's see. James was wondering how the admissions committee looks at students who might have low GPAs from their undergrad, but did a lot better in a post-bac program.
So we definitely look at undergrad and then any graduate courses or post-bac program courses. So if you have lower GPA in your undergrad, but you've been able to do really well in post-bac or graduate level, we're looking at both of those and not making a decision just based on the undergrad. We're looking at all of it and saying, okay, maybe there was a challenge early on for whatever reason. Maybe you spoke to it in your personal statement, maybe not, but we can see that things have changed and we can see the trajectory is improving, and we feel that they're going to be maybe having a struggle, but able to make it. And so we have, one thing I didn't say about my role is we also have academic assistants. So we know that not everyone is going to sail through without a challenge. And so we want to make sure that there's assistance for those people who may stumble a little bit.
Okay, perfect. And then Zarina went ahead and threw this question in the Q&A. At Mizzou, do you
You're
guys...
freezing up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me go ahead and repeat that. Zarina posted in the Q&A, at Mizzou, do you guys have a primary screening based off of GPA and MCAT before the holistic review? Like, do you guys have a cutoff or anything like that?
On our website, historically, it said you have to have a 495 and a 3.0 GPA. For this year, we will likely be changing that to a or 495 or 3.0 GPA so that we can at least, our admissions group can start to take an initial review and make a there. But historically in the past, if you didn't have a 495 and a 3.0, then yes, you did not move forward. That will not be the case in the future.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that for us. And then what would you say is a significant or a good amount of hours for shadowing for a pre-med to have?
So that's a little bit tricky because honestly, I sit in on the admissions committee meetings and I think people There's 25 people, so there's 25 different personalities, and I can't say that each of them has the same idea in their mind as far as number. Sometimes it's the quality and not the quantity. It's the experience and the ability to talk about in a valid way what you did. But it's always better, I think, to have more versus less. I'm not going to say you have to have 200 hours of shadowing or 100. Just you need to have quality shadowing experiences that look sustained. Not that you did it on one weekend and then it was over, but that it's something that you did over time.
Okay, perfect. And I see there's actually quite a few questions in here about shadowing. So just to follow up, one of the pre-meds on here was having difficulty finding shadowing experiences. So they're wondering if you have any recommendations. Does a job in the medical field count the same as shadowing?
So they'll look at that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some people may have done things with EMT systems, or they may have done some volunteer work. They'll look at that too. It is true that more and more nowadays, it's harder to find shadowing than it used to be in the past. Some specialties are easier than others. If you're in a location where there is a MAPS program or some other program like that, they may help you to arrange shadowing. I know that we do that through our MEMO program and our MAPS program on campus. But you can just do this. What I did was I went to my doctor and I said, hey, you know, can I spend some time with you in the summer? And they know you and you have a relationship with them, and it's going to be harder for them to say no, easier for you to get your foot in the door with people you know. So you might consider those kind of groups that will help you with shadowing. And if that doesn't work, you might consider relationships you already have with your own physicians.
Okay, great advice there. And then on the admissions committee, how do you guys view gap years?
It varies. It depends on what's done in the gap year. You know, you may have a gap year that's very, that you're doing things to really help you in your growth before you start medical school. Sometimes it's research. Sometimes it's going and doing something in another country where you're helping others. And so it's not looked as negative as long as you can explain what you did and talk about the rationale behind it. Then I think it's fine.
Okay. And then let's see here. How at Mizzou do you guys review prereqs completed at community colleges compared to four-year institutions?
We just want the prerequisites, and there's not like it has to be at a four-year institution or not. We want to make sure that you have the prerequisites and meet the criteria.
Okay, perfect. And then I'm going to scoot over and pull a few of these questions from the chat. And I see Nahir has a question. She previously took her MCAT in March and wasn't too happy with their score, so she has it scheduled for July this year. So she's wondering if she should wait until she gets her July score back before submitting an application, or should she apply now and update her score later?
How long does it take to get the MCAT score back?
1 month.
You'd have it back in August?
Mm-hmm.
Back in August. I think it probably would be better to submit it with the new score if you're really worried about that score, the first score. Because
okay.
People are going to make decisions based on that first score. And if you're really worried about it, I would try to wait.
Okay. And then let's see. Oh, we did have some questions. Some students wanted you to just repeat where you got your medical degree.
Okay. So actually I came to Columbia with all intentions of college and leaving. And they started the PBL curriculum the year that I was starting medical school. So I stayed here for medical school, University of Missouri, Columbia. And we have had at that point an integrated residency program. This was before the all-in, before you had to go through the match. And so I did my residency at University of Missouri, Columbia as well. So I've had all of my training in the same place.
Oh, perfect. So you are definitely well-versed in their program. Let's see. Does your school provide any resources for USMLE prep?
So last year, our associate dean, our senior associate dean, my boss, paid for all of the students to have a USMLE prep program. I can't remember the name of it, but they did last year do that, and I'm assuming he'll do it every year. I don't know. He's new to the position, and I don't know if they've done that in the past. I don't think they have, but last year they did.
Okay, and then Jen's wondering in regards to your problem-based curriculum, how well does that fit with the board exams, content, and style?
So it was changed to patient-based learning. So now it's called patient-based learning. And what I would say is this, our students score higher than the national average on the boards. We have students who get 240s, 250s, 260s. And we're historically over the last 5 years have been every year higher than the national average. Our school also is higher than the national average on the match rate. We had a 99% match rate this year. And our students will say that they are well prepared not only for exams, but because they start learning in a case-based format from day one, they're very well prepared on the floors. And I've heard this, and I'm not just saying this because of my job. I mean, I've heard this from Children's Mercy and various other places. We do a survey the year after our students go into residency. We survey the residency program directors, and they say by far that they feel like our students are very well prepared for residency and clinical scenarios. So I honestly, and I'm maybe biased because I did PBL, I don't see any other way that I would learn. And many of our students are learning very well that way and very successful.
Okay. And then let's transition here a little bit into letter of recommendations, if you don't mind. I see a lot of questions popping up here. So specifically at your school, do you guys have a minimum number of letters of rec that you require for the application?
You know, I need to have that in front of me because I don't want to tell you incorrectly. I think it's 3, but you can do, I think it's 3, but you can have up to 5.
Okay, perfect. And then let's see.
But all of that is on the website. So you can go on our website and see all those criteria.
Okay, sounds great. So make sure you guys go ahead and check out their website. Todd Shell, if you don't mind just throwing the link inside the chat there for everyone to access. And then one student has said that they can't get any letters of rec from any professor. Who else do you recommend that they approach?
The question would be if they're currently in school, what's causing the challenge in getting the letter from the professor, right? And so one of the things is that is a problem sometimes with some schools where they want a recommendation letter from a professor who gave you a grade, right? And they don't necessarily want it from just a TA. And so I think what it would be very important to do, especially if you've been out of school maybe for a few years, is find time to contact either by phone or going there and talking with someone to try to see if they might be able to write you a letter.
Okay, perfect. And let's see here. Oh, and Dr. Young-Walker, do you mind sharing your contact information with the PreMedSTAR attendees here?
You want me to type it in, or what do you want me to do?
Just maybe if you just say your email address, and then I'll put it in the chat as well.
Okay, so it's Young-Walker, L, Y-O-U-N-G, W-A-L-K-E-R-L, at health, H-E-A-L-T-H, Missouri, spelled out, MISSOURI.edu.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Let's see what else has come in here. Okay, so in terms of scholarships, do you guys offer scholarships to students based off of merit?
So we do have financial aid in the form of scholarship aid. We also have, of course, loans. When you look at, and I wish Sherry Marks, our financial person, was here, our tuition rate is lower than national average tuition rate. The amount of loans that students come out, loan debt, is less than the federal loan debt. And I can't tell you the number of scholarships, but yes, we do have scholarships.
Okay, perfect. And let's see, some more questions here. Someone wanted you to just clarify how research is viewed by the admissions committee.
So, you know, we have an MD PhD program, and there's a few people that apply that way. Research is going to be more highly important in the MD PhD program, but it's, you know, it's not mandatory. Many of our students don't have research, and that's okay. But if you have research and have some information about it, and share it at the interview, it's going to cause you to maybe stand out, whereas others may not have the research. I wouldn't do research just to get into medical school, because you don't have to have it to get into medical school. But if you're already doing it, it's a plus, and it may help you some. It is not a determining factor at Mizzou Med for getting in, though.
Okay, perfect. And just to follow up from them, so maybe not having research activity would not count adversely to,
No.
Okay, perfect.
I mean, we're looking at the whole package, and that's a piece of it for some, not for others. You may have much more in the way of leadership experiences, and that may be where you stand out.
Okay, perfect. And let's see, going back to letters of rec, are letters of rec from 2 years ago acceptable, or do they have to be more recent?
That's a question I don't want to answer and be wrong. I'd say please look at our website and every program's website, because it may be different. Depending on the medical school you're applying to, it may be different. We are going to want things more close in time to your application, but if you are a student who maybe has applied and is reapplying, then you might have a letter that's a little older. And I don't think it's there's anything that says you can't, but please look at the website just to make sure for every place you apply to.
Okay, great advice. Let's see here. Okay, so some people are wondering if it's absolutely necessary to have shadowing or clinical experience.
That's one of them that for Mizzou Med it'd be really important to have.
Okay.
Now, other places may not see it as valuable as we do, but it is very valuable with us.
Okay. And with the AMCAS application, we all know that it is on a rolling basis. So how much does that rolling review take into consideration whether a student would be competitive or not with their application?
So the way that we do our process, you're not going to be, you're not going to have a less of a chance because you applied maybe later, right? Because we don't fill the class at the beginning. We fill the class on a rolling basis. And so I would say that I am someone who believes that you should do things early, but doing them a little later is not going to prevent you from getting in.
Okay, perfect. Let's see here. You did mention that you have the MD PhD program. How do students apply into that track compared to the MD alone?
So when they apply, there's a place where they can say they want to do the MD PhD. And then we are working together with the PhD program to be more kind of unified in how we work together. But they come and do the interview, and they interview for the PhD and the MD program, both of them on separate days, because I think their interviews are the day before us. And then we've been working together to kind of look at acceptance of MD PhD candidates.
Perfect, thank you.
And there is financial aid for, there's been a commitment to give money to a couple of MD PhD students.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, and what types of extracurriculars or leadership activities stand out to you personally as someone who reviews applications?
So I will say I'm the Associate Dean for Student Programs, and I'm an advisor to the committee. I don't really review applications or do interviews. I can tell you my personal opinion from being around and being on admission committees in the past. There's not any one leadership experience or one extracurricular that you have to do. You need to engage in things that you like to do, because when you like to do it, you'll really do it and do it well. And so for me, I did things like back then we had Blacks in Pursuit of Medicine and the Pre-Med Club, and I had lots of different activities that were medicine related, but I also had some that were not. The LBC choir and a sorority. So I did things that I wanted to do because I liked the experiences they gave me. And if you do that, then you can write about them well, and you can talk about them well in your interview.
Perfect, thank you. And someone's wondering here if it's better to stick with one practitioner for longer in terms of shadowing, or is it better to see a range of specialties?
I don't think there is a answer that one of those is better. Either one is fine, as long as you have experiences that you can speak to.
Okay, perfect. Okay. And let's see, someone's actually wondering if you'd know the current tuition at Mizzou Med.
No, I don't know the exact tuition price, but I think it's probably
that will be on the website.
Yeah, that will be posted.
Perfect. And going back to the MCAT a little bit, someone's wondering if it's too late to enter inside this cycle if they're taking their MCAT in September.
So then you get it back in October?
Right.
Yeah, that I think you probably will lessen your chances because we go through our screening and make our decisions on interviews around that time, and so it might be cutting it close.
Okay. And I see Wachi here is posting a little bit of a follow-up. You mentioned that prereqs taken at community colleges were not looked at differently from four-year institutes. How about prereqs taken online?
You know, we're looking at your average GPA, cumulative, and your science GPA, right? Now, it's very true, one institution, those same classes might be maybe harder than at another institution, so that's true. And so there's 25 members on the admissions committee, and I can't tell you how everyone is going to look at it, but the thing that's going to get you in the door will be that average GPA and MCAT at the cutoff will get you looked at. And then it goes on to screening. And then it's not just about the numbers. It's about all of those different qualities. The numbers just get a blanket rating. All the other qualities get ratings too. So it's not just about that. So if you have the minimum criteria, you're going to move on to at least be assessed.
Okay, perfect. And let's see, you guys did mention your diversity and inclusion statements. Specifically, what systems do you have in place for students of color once they are at your university?
So we've tried, honestly, to have different systems in place for all students. And so I've increased the time of the person that works with me on health and wellness activities for all students. And so my plan is that this year, every student will meet with them at least once just to check in, see how their transition to school is going, making sure they don't have any kind of challenges or support that they need. And then our staff is a pretty diverse staff. We have people from all different ethnicities. And so that allows, I hope, students to feel comfortable just walking into the student programs office and saying, hey, Andrea, can you talk to me? I need something. So then we have more formal activities like these diversity dialogues that we have every block. And then we have different events or activities that happen to bring all students together. Some are focused on diversity and inclusion, some are not. We had recently a whole cultural food thing where people cooked food from their, that was indicative of what their culture is, and then shared it with all the other students. So there's lots of social activities that we have, and then also some specific engagement processes that are put into place to help all students feel welcome.
Okay, great, thank you. And how do you guys view W's like withdrawals or academic probation records in the application process?
Well, I mean, I think if you've had some challenges academically, that's going to be noticeable, and there may be discussion about it, and that may or may not weigh in the decisions related to your movement forward with screening and interviewing. But, you know, that's not to say people who've had those things have never had an interview. They have. And so it's not just about those grades, it's about your whole picture. And if your whole picture and your whole package is a positive, you're going to be able to move to the next step.
Okay, perfect. And then how about someone who has an academic integrity violation on their record? How do you recommend they go about explaining the situation or addressing what happened?
Upfront and honest, and not trying to make excuses. This is what happened. This is what I learned from it, and this is why it will never happen again. I mean, that's the best way to attack it.
Okay, perfect. Let's see. Okay. So we just mentioned the academic integrity violation. How about like a non-academic disciplinary action, for example, possession of alcohol underage?
Yeah, it would be the same, and we've had that happen before. And typically, when people have kind of come in and said, "Hey, this is something that you see on my record, and I want to make sure you understand it," then that's been something that when they've been able to talk openly and honestly about it, we sometimes bring it up in the committee, and it's not a big deal. We know what happened, we know the resolution, and it's not like you're trying to hide something.
Okay, perfect. And in terms of the activities and involvement section, some people are wondering what they should include and what they should leave off. So what's your recommendation on length of activity? So let's see.
Your personal statement is going to have a defined length, and after that you can't move on past it, right? So you don't want to put so much that you're going past your character length. You would want to include things that you can, not just a list, I did this and I did that. They can see that in your resume. But you'll want to include things that you can talk about and give a little bit of detail of and reflect on that experience when you put the activities there. You're talking about it.
And in regards to the resume, what would be considered a significant amount of time allocated towards one activity? Is 3 months or longer, 1 year or longer? Do you have any opinions on that?
You know, I don't, there is no like black and white. It has to be a certain amount of months. I mean, I think if it was a valuable experience for you, then you need to put it and then be able to talk about it.
Okay, perfect. And let's see. Would having a higher MCAT score cancel out a lower GPA and vice versa in regards to reviewing the application?
So every case is different, but sometimes people may struggle at first in their first year, or they're having maybe some issue in their life where they have a year that falls off on their GPA, but then you see a trend where it doesn't stay that way all 4 years, and you see a high MCAT score. That's going to look more favorable than someone who maybe struggles the whole 4 years, has a really low GPA, never gets better, never see improvement, especially in those science courses, and then has maybe a medium MCAT or even a higher one, because there's going to be a question of what's the disconnect, right? Why is the GPA so low and the MCAT so high? What's the disconnect? And if there's a rationale behind it and you can explain it, that's a difference. But if you can't, that's going to be a challenge.
Okay, perfect. And maybe this will be our last question here. Let's just see. So in regards to, I just want to make this announcement for everyone, in regard to specifics on how many students they accept or where to apply, how many people get interviews, you guys can go ahead and re-reference this video and look at Dr. Young-Walker's presentation because she had all that in there. We will be posting this online. And one last question is just, do you have any advice for people entering in this cycle? What's your best piece of advice?
Well, I think number one, okay, so I wasn't the stellar student with the top MCAT score, right? And I had a couple of blips in a couple of classes. One class I had a D in, right? But I knew I wanted to be a doctor. So if you know you want to do this, you do everything you can to get there. And so I knew that I had to do some extra things to make up for those blips. And that included all the activities that I did. So go through this cycle. If you don't make it and you want to be a doctor, do not give up. Because not everybody gets in on their first try. There are students in my first year class now that will say, I'm here and this was my third time. And they never gave up and they did what they needed to do to make their application stronger and they got in the next year or the next year. So don't give up.
Okay. And throw your thank yous inside the chat. Really appreciated your presentation here. And we're just about coming up on the finishing time. So I just want to remind you guys of a couple of things. We have the 1 week invite challenge. So invite your friends to join PreMedSTAR and you can win the Kaplan book sets for reviewing for the MCAT. And then we're also going to have our next webinar next Thursday, same time, And we're going to go ahead and post that link on the PreMedSTAR website for you guys to register, all right? So we're going to be covering how to get great letters of rec and how to write a perfect personal statement. So thank you so much for joining us. This will be posted on our PreMedSTAR YouTube channel, so look out for that. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your night.